the small English dead. His heart and his liver they savaged, as Her Majesty watched the glad. He was betrayed by motive. With the crown made of thorns he was tortured, for setting his own country free. How am I a traitor, cried Wallace, when England is foreign to me? They murdered the Wallace for treason. His body has long since decayed.
To remember William Wallace. William Wallace was hung, drawn and quartered on the 23rd of August 1305. He was illegally tried for treason at Westminster Hall. He was taken from Westminster Hall, stripped naked, put on a stretcher, and carried in that stretcher 6 miles along the road to here at Smithfield, where he was tortured and then hung, drawn and quartered. For many Scots, he will never be forgotten. It's not just William Wallace that was hung, drawn and quartered. They also took his brother, John Wallace, to here, and he was hung, drawn and quartered. Other Scottish patriots, Simon Fraser, John Fraser, brought here and hung, drawn and quartered. Also, many English people who opposed the imperialist monarch Edward I were hung, drawn and quartered. This place is a place of death and destruction. It says here, to the immortal memory of Sir William Wallace, Scottish patriot, born Elderslie, Renfrewshire, circa 1270 AD, who from the year 1296 fought dauntlessly in defence of his country's liberty and independence in the face of fearful odds and great hardship, being eventually betrayed and captured, brought to London and put to death near this spot on the 23rd of August 1305. His example, heroism and devotion inspired those who came after him to win victory from defeat, and his memory remains for all time a source of pride, honour and inspiration to his countrymen. Now, on the plaque it says, near this spot. We've actually done an investigation and discovered that the gallows where people were hung, drawn and quartered is across the road at that building there called the Haberdashers' Hall. That's where the gallows were. That's where people were brutally hung, drawn and quartered. Anyway, William Wallace, in the eyes of many Scots, will never be into words now by Robert Burns the poet. The story of Wallace poured a tide of Scottish prejudice into my veins, which will boil along there till the floodgates of life shut in eternal rest. William Wallace was a freedom fighter, and like many other countries' freedom fighters, he should be remembered. going to read some words now by the poet Byron. They never fail who die in a great cause. The block may soak their gore, their heads may sodden in the sun, their limbs be strung to city gates and castle walls, but still their spirits walk abroad. And that's words by Byron. Also get some words here by an Italian patriot, Giuseppe Garibaldi. William Wallace sheds as bright a glory upon his valorous nation as ever was shed upon their country by the greatest men of Greece or Rome. Some very nice words there by other patriots from other countries. I'm now going to ask Gwen to give us a few words. Gwen?
Okay, well, I would just like to say this is the very first time I've actually been to the spot where William Wallace was taken and he was hung, drawn and quartered. He was hung, drawn and quartered because they said that he was a traitor to England. England was a separate country who came along and dominated Scotland, and he had to fight back because they were living under absolute tyranny, and he was taken down here, and it was just absolutely horrific death that he was given. And the saddest part of all is his body was never brought back to Scotland. Parts of him were put all over at different parts of probably in London, Tower Bridge. I think his head was put on a spike. This was a man who was extremely brave, who stood up for his people. He never ever betrayed anybody, but he was betrayed by people who were taking bribes, and he was brought down here against his will, and they had no army because basically he was taken away and hidden away in a house in Fenchurch Street here in London, and he was taken to Westminster Hall where he was given a fake trial, as James said earlier. But what's really sad is that his body never got returned, but that does not mean that his spirit didn't travel back to Scotland, because his spirit lives on in every single one of us who believes in freedom for Scotland. It is time now that Scotland had its own parliament with its own laws, that it can do what it wants. It doesn't have to be constantly getting permission from Westminster. And I'd just like to say that Sior Alapa Gubra.
I'm not Scottish but Irish, and I think we have a very close alliance over the years, and Scottish resistance and Irish resistance, essentially the same cause, a terrible history. And there's one common denominator over the years. There's a guy called Oliver Cromwell who did great damage, very cruel man, who killed thousands and thousands in Scotland. He killed half the population of Ireland because he was a religious bigot. And this guy is celebrated to this day, and he's celebrated, commemorated in Westminster on the 3rd of September every year. And I think it's a terrible thing. It's about sanitizing his history. Up until 1890, this country, England, considered him a terrible tyrant. You've got to remember, he killed 10% of the English population in his tyranny. And by the time he was dead, this country unanimously returned to the monarchy because he was such a tyrant. And this country has stayed that way because of him, because of what he did. But the Victorians wanted to sanitize his history back in the 1890s, built 4 statues in the country, and dismissed the history and said it was myth and legend. So there's associations, Cromwell associations, who say to this day on their website that Cromwell's history in Ireland and Scotland is myth and history and didn't really exist. But all the positive things they want to say about him are great and did exist and did happen. So it is entirely wrong that Cromwell is remembered as a hero. He was not a hero. He was a religious bigot. He slaughtered, he ethnically cleansed, and he should be remembered for that. He should be dismissed from the history, and there should be a stain on the history because of him. So, to summarize, on the 3rd of September, there will be a very large rally of Celtic nations, not just Irish. We have a big Celtic flag there on the day. There'll be Scottish, there'll be Welsh, there'll be a lot of London Irish, and there'll be a large contingent of Irish as well. to draw to the attention of the Westminster authorities what's going on in this commemoration, how wrong it is to remember a tyrant. And internationally, people say it to the British, they say to the English authorities, the Russians have said it, the Germans said it, the Americans have said it, you shouldn't be celebrating somebody who's killed so many, who's slaughtered so many. So that commemoration will be put under huge pressure on the 3rd of September, and we hope it will be cancelled in future years because there'll be a very large presence there on that day. So I just want to conclude by saying thank you very much to Scotland and all support it has been for our cause. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
The wee boy. And when he was brought here to be put to death, he held on to that wee cross while he was tortured and brutally hung, drawn and quartered. Never forget what they done to him. Never forget what they done to all these other Scottish patriots just because they wanted freedom for Scotland. Never forget these guys and what they did for Scotland. Thank you very much.
Here.